Awesome. Well, it is another Tuesday. Fantastic Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. It is already almost the end of April, which is pretty crazy. April 20th. Oh my gosh, 2021. So it's been a busy week for me, so it's been great. It's nice to be able to, be teaching again and be able to kind of transfer it to an online format, which is difficult because I really love when I'm doing medicine wheel teachings, passing the medicines around in a circle, which is really lovely. And it's also really nice to just, be able to ask, be there hands-on, especially when it comes to the drums. Because, there's only so much drumming you can do on your desk, and there's almost only too much singing, or not enough singing really, that you can do when I'm across, because there's that weird lag, and so it's always really difficult to teach online. But you make the best of a bad situation, I suppose. And so the storytelling is very, very successful online, which is really great. And I was really inspired to be able to share some stories today. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on today. I'm going to share the Raven story, and I'm going to share the creation story, the creation story, or shall I say recreation story, which is, yeah, it's taught me a lot, and it's been really fun, and I'm very animated when I do it, which is great. But I just wanted to start, of course, by welcoming everybody into the circle, because it's really important to know where you are, to know where you're going, to know where you've been, to know that path ahead as well. But it's really about acknowledging the ancestors that have been here before us, the families that have been here for thousands upon thousands of generations. So my family is Cree, Anishinaabe, and Métis. We're from Muskeg Lake Cree Nation in Saskatchewan. And that's in Treaty 6 territory. It's on the border of Treaty 6 and Treaty 4 territory. But I always like to start by acknowledging where I am, which is Treaty 7 territory. This is the heart of Mohinstis, which means elbow and Blackfoot. And so this is Blackfoot territory. This is part of the Blackfoot Confederacy. So I honor the Blackfoot teachers and elders and the ancestors of Siksika, Kainai, and Pagani. So I have learned so much from so many different people from those nations, and it's a gift to be able to build, a newfound family here with that. Oh, and I suppose I should shut off my ringer. Oops. I want to do that again. But I also want to acknowledge the Tsutsuna. I actually haven't been out to the new Costco yet. I'm looking forward to going and checking it out soon, now that I'm kind of off quarantine. I just really honor those people out there and the land out there. Yeah, it's changed so much, even in the last 10 years. It's just changed drastically. I moved here in 92, and so to see just how much the city has changed and the city has grown, but how we still have those pockets of that sense of community. I think that's really what we should take away from that. So stop sprawling and start really looking inwards. I also honor the Stoney Nakoda. From Morley, which includes Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. I love to go out there to sweat. They used to have a wonderful restaurant out there that we always used to take my kokum and my mum to for Mother's Day and for Easter. I'm not even sure if it's still out there anymore. I don't know, COVID's hit a lot of really great restaurants hard, so I always recommend, even if you can only do it once a week, really support those local businesses. I know I sound like an infomercial, but I also wanted to honor that we're walking in the footsteps of Métis Region 3, which is why I proudly wear my Métis sash to act as that bridge between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. And when we acknowledge the land, we're acknowledging far more than that. We're acknowledging those families that have been here for thousands, upon thousands of generations. We're honoring, the land itself, but we're also honoring the connections that have brought us here. It reminds us that everything happens for a reason, and we're here for a purpose. And the easiest way to learn our purpose is to learn about everyone and everything around us. And so when we do the land acknowledgements, it's not just empty words. We're not just reading the names of those nations, but it's really about respecting the relationship that we have with those nations. It's really about understanding what's brought us here, whether we're first generation, fourth generation, 10th generation Canadian. It's really about acknowledging that the First Nations people have been here, and we have so many different things to learn from each other and ways to grow together and build community in a meaningful way. And so we also have that responsibility to learn from our past so we don't do it again, and also to leave a better world for our future generations. And we can do that by learning about how we did it back in the day. You know, whenever I teach medicine wheel teachings, a lot of the same teachings are in sustainability, because it's really about giving something back and not just taking. Because if we take and take, there's going to be nothing left. It's going to be depleted. But if we're always giving something back, if we're always conscious about that cycle and feeding into that circle, then we, you know, we don't throw the world out of balance. And so we need to get back to those traditional ways of acknowledging that everything has a life, everything has a spirit, everything has a voice, and we have a relationship with everything. We have to recognize that and not see it as separate because we are together. This is why we say all my relations, because we're all related in that circle. And so, to honor that, I'm going to share with you the Cree Welcome Song. Traditionally, when we sing songs, we sing in rounds of 4 to honor the 4 directions of the medicine wheel. But this song is a little bit different. We sing it in rounds of 3, and that's to keep the circle open and welcoming so everyone completes the circle today. Because in a circle, we're all connected. There's no beginning, there's no end. No one is greater or less than anyone else in the circle, just like in the hoop of life. So it teaches us to honor each other for those differences, because if everybody was exactly the same, the world would be incredibly boring and nothing would ever get accomplished. So we need those differences. We need everybody to bring something different into that circle, to bring those different gifts into the circle, to help build or to help create or to help unify. We have all of those gifts within our circle. We just have to be able to honor each other for those gifts and get away from politics, because politics isn't really real, whereas our connections to each other, that's real. And so, yeah, Mia Sin, which is the Cree welcome song. Again, we sing it in rounds of 3. When that circle's open, you can come and go as you please. So if people join me kind of halfway through the broadcast, that's okay, because that circle's open. If people have to leave, that's okay, because that circle's always open. And it's really about honoring that ebb and flow that everyone has to take. It's honoring that not everybody has to be stuck in, it shouldn't be rigid. We should just always be welcoming no matter what. And this song is from the Natahau family from Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation. And so I honor that family for keeping this song and this story alive. I really love this song because of that inclusionary nature of it, because of saying, you know, everyone is beautiful and everyone is connected and everyone needs to come together to create that beauty around us. It's just such a gift to be able to share this song. And usually in Cree we say tawao, which means welcome. But this song it is beautiful. It is beautiful to sit in the circle together, which is a gift. And so I thank that family. And yeah, so I'm going to share the Cree welcome song. Now, it doesn't just mean welcome. Of course, it means beautiful. Miasen, miasen, hasemina, hasemina, epetakote, niwagomagan, hota, homa, kitaskino, miasen, miasen, hasemina, hasemina, epetakote, niwagomagan, hota, homa, kitaskino, miasen, miasen, hasemina, hasemina, epetakote, te niwa gomagan hota homa kita skino. Hi, and welcome to the circle today, everybody. I'm just going to close my door really quick because I can hear my kids running up and down the stairs, so...
Hi, Mom.
Hey.
I was wondering if I could sing the next song with you.
You want to sing the next song with me?
Yeah,
Sure.
because why not?
Okay, what song do you want to sing, baby?
I don't know.
Do you want to do the bear, the chickadee, or...
Sure.
You want to do the chickadee?
Bear, maybe.
You want to do the bear? Okay,
Yeah.
so we're going to do the bear song. So, and then I'll share stories.
I'm gonna take this off.
So this was my son's favorite song when he was little. Now the Raven song is his favorite song, which I'm going to do later too. But the bear teaches us about balance. It teaches us about always giving something back before we take it. It teaches us that everything is there if we, always make sure that we maintain that circle. And the bear always would teach us how to live on the land. It would teach us what to eat and when to eat it. It would show us different medicines depending on what we needed. It also knows, if there's not enough elk one year, it'll avoid the elk, and we'd know, okay, avoid the elk because they need, they need to replenish themselves. If the bear's not eating a certain kind of berry one year and switching to eat a lot more roots, we would do the same because we knew that's what the world needed. That's what the earth needed at that time. Also, if there's something wrong in the environment, the bears will let us know. So out west with the pine beetles, the bears are actually chewing and clawing and ripping pods of pine beetles off the trees, trying to save the trees, trying to slow those beetles' progress. But of course, there's a lot more beetles than there are bears, but they're trying. They're really trying. Out in, I believe it was Williams Lake a few years ago, the bear just stopped eating the fish. And the First Nations people who watched the bear were like, whoa, the bears aren't eating the fish. Don't eat the fish. And well, of course, it's a tourist town, so people go there to fish, and then they were eating the fish, and people were getting sick, and they were like, what's going on? And so scientists came in, and they tested the fish, and they found a little microorganism in the fish that was making everybody sick. So the bear knew it. They didn't touch the fish. The First Nations people who watched the bear knew it. They didn't touch the fish. And everybody else had a pretty miserable summer. So lots of tummy troubles. They were on the toilet a lot. And also, even here in Alberta, the bear will teach us how to live on the land. So about 10 years ago, actually probably more than that now, the bear helped to bring the Banff National Park back into balance.
Oh, yeah, Banff National Park. Can I tell the...
Yeah, you can tell that story.
Yeah, so, basically, friggin' the U.S. back in, I forgot what year, they dropped off, like, a bunch of wolves. They dropped off a bunch of wolves into Banff National Park, thinking, it's just a few wolves, what could possibly go wrong? Everything went wrong. Like, all the game, was dying because of the wolves, and the bear, they saw that the game were, disappearing.
What is the game?
The game are, elk, moose, buffalo,
not buffalo. There's no buffalo. Well, now there's buffalo in Banff National Park,
but it counts as game,
deer,
though, right?
Yeah.
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 And,
sheep, yep.
Then, the bears, they went, and they saw that all of the wolves were devastating the population. So what they did is they went and they ate the wolves. And, a crazy thing about that is when they checked the digestive tract of the bears, they saw, tags, I guess,
yeah,
that were, basically, saying, hey, these wolves weren't originally from Banff, they were from the U.S. So the bear somehow knew which wolves didn't belong there and decided to eat them, which is, it's really cool how they are able to do that. I have no idea how they're able to do that.
I don't know, but they knew what needed to happen, and so even though they don't traditionally eat wolves, they did it because they knew that's how they could sustain, those other populations, those animals for seasons to come, but they would also be fed.
Give me a sec.
Awesome. So that's what this song honors. It honors the bear. It honors, our connection to the bear, how the bear teaches us strength and courage. But it's not in the way we think. It's the courage to be ourselves. And it's the strength to stand up for what's right, because that's what the bear does. It stands up for what's right. And so, this is the bear song. Do you want to just sing it all the way through, or is it call and response?
Call and response, maybe.
Okay, so I'll sing it and you sing?
Mm-hmm.
You can sing along too, because we're going to do it as a call and response.
I'm all right. I love you, Mom.
Okay, I love you too, Punk. Okay, have fun. Thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you.
I'm gonna go for the cat.
His voice has changed so much in the last year. If you go back to some of the beginning first videos when the kids were singing with me, his voice is like, boom! It's crazy. It's strange to me. So normally in Cree culture, what we would do is we would get the kids packed up and they would go live on the land, for a week or two, or sometimes up to a month by themselves. But we haven't gone camping enough for him to be prepared enough to do that. But I'm hoping to do a lot more camping this summer, so he will be able to kind of go off on his own while we do go camping and learning a bit more about himself. Because that's kind of our coming of age ceremony. It starts about the age of 12, and that transition period goes until about 22 to 24, depending. And that's when our brains and our bodies stop developing. But I wanted to share with you the Raven story and the Raven song, which he's going to be sad that he's missing. But, and also the creation story. But let's start with the Raven story. So, okay, here we go. A long, long time ago, the animals looked very, very different. So this was before the two-leggeds came to the earth. For the second time, I should say, because we've been here before. But the animals had to learn different lessons, and they had to learn different things that they were going to teach us and teach all of the other animals. And the raven looked very different. So some of the animals looked really different. Some of them were taller, some of them were shorter, some of them were squatters, some of them were bigger. So they just all kind of went through their own changes as they learned their lessons that they were going to share with us and going to teach us, because the animals are actually our greatest teachers. So the raven looked really, really different indeed. He had beautiful rainbow feathers, and no matter which way you looked at him, he was iridescent. So he kind of like shone different colors of the rainbow. And because of this, he started to get a little full of himself, and he was like looking at himself in rivers and ponds and streams and whatever he could find to reflect his beautiful image. And then he would look and be like, wow, I am so gorgeous. I am so fabulous and beautiful and wonderful. I must be the best animal because I can fly. I am so smart. And look at my feathers. They are amazing. And so because of this, he started to get a little egotistical. He started to get a little full of himself. And then he started to tell the other animals that he was the best. He was like, hey guys, have you seen these feathers? I am the best. I'm obviously the best animal because look how gorgeous I am and I can fly. And all of the animals were like, well, no, Raven. Like, nobody's greater or less than anyone else. We all have different things that we're going to learn, different things that we're going to share with the two-leggeds. And so we're all equal. And the Raven said, well, except for me, because, I mean, look at me, guys. I'm obviously the best animal. So Creator obviously loves me the most. And all of the animals said, well, Raven, if you're the best animal, then maybe we're not special. And the raven said, no, you're right, guys. Nobody is special. I'm the only one who's special here because I am the best. So why are you even trying? And so all of the animals started to feel bad. They started to think, well, I guess if we're not the best animal and we're not special, we'll just stop doing what makes us unique and what makes us awesome. And so all of the animals stopped doing what made them incredible. The bees stopped pollinating, the butterflies stopped pollinating, so of course all of the flowers died. The beaver, who always redirects the water, which is really important because not only does it redirect the water so that different kinds of plants will get that water, but also it backs up the river enough so that smaller animals can actually get fresh drinking water as well. And traditional plants will grow, but they won't grow if those trees aren't down to back up the river in a certain way. And so those plants didn't grow, those medicines didn't grow, animals started to get sick, and some of the smaller animals started to just get dehydrated because there was no place safe to drink water that was still. And all of the woodpeckers stopped poking into trees. They started getting lazy and just eating bugs wherever they would fall, as opposed to really digging for them in trees. And then the trees started like rotting and dying from the inside out. And so some of the trees started crumbling. All of the little bugs that actually clean up, so things like the dung beetle and things like the ants and the wasps, they stopped cleaning up. And so the whole world was starting to pile up with all of this garbage and rubbish. And just it started to fall apart. And then of course when there's piles of garbage and rubbish and like, you know, rotted trees, well, fire comes. And the bear was like, whoa, 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 what is happening? What is going on? Nobody is doing what makes them amazing. And the whole world's falling apart. So of course the bear, who keeps everybody in balance, went to figure out what was going on. And as he talked to the animals, he saw that the raven had made them feel bad. And he said, everyone, you all have amazing abilities and talents, and you're all special in your own way. Nobody's greater or less than anyone else. And they said, well, we know, Bear, but the raven seems to think that he's better than everyone else. And so the bear shook his head and he's like, okay, I'll go talk to the raven, but you just get back to doing what makes you amazing, because everybody, look around. The whole world is crumbling. The whole world is falling apart because nobody is sharing their gifts. And are you happy not sharing your gifts? And the animals thought about it and they looked around and they saw how the whole world was falling apart. And they're like, oh my gosh, you're right, Bear. We need to get back to doing what makes us amazing. And actually, when we share what we love, And if we share what our gifts are, it makes us happy too. And so, of course, they got back to doing what they do best. And the whole world just recovered very, very quickly. And the bear lumbered over to see the raven, and he said, Raven, what's your problem? You're making everybody feel bad. And the raven said, well, it's not my fault that I'm amazing and gorgeous and beautiful and fabulous and I'm the best. And the bear said, well, no, Raven, you're not the best. Nobody's greater or less than anyone else. I mean, you're awesome in your own way. Your feathers are pretty great, but you're not the best. And the raven said, well, obviously I am, because look at me, bear. Have you seen these feathers? They shine rainbow every way you look at them. And I can fly. And I'm smart. I'm so smart. I'm so clever. So obviously I am the best animal. And the bear said, no, Raven, you're not. And you made everyone feel bad. And he's like, that's not my problem that they can't compare to the awesomeness that is the raven. And finally the bear said, okay, Raven, if you think you're the best animal, and the raven said, of course I'm the best animal. The bear said, well, why don't you prove it? And the raven said, yeah, I can do anything because I am the best. And the bear said, fine. Only the best animal could catch the sun. So go and catch the sun. And the raven said, of course I'm the best animal. Of course I can catch the sun. So without thinking, he took off and he flew higher and higher and higher. And as he flew higher, he got warmer and warmer. And he was determined to get to the sun. So he flew higher and higher and higher, and it got a little brighter closer to the sun, but he was determined to prove that he was the best. He flew higher and higher, and it was getting warmer, and he flew higher until his feathers burst into flames, and he was like, oh my gosh, I'm on fire! And he was patting himself out, and he crashed into the ocean. It put the fire out, but he swam to the shore, and as he pulled himself out and he looked down, his feathers, they weren't rainbow anymore. They were completely burned, completely singed, and totally black. And he was angry. Oh, he was so mad. How could the bear play such a trick on him? And so he started marching angrily over to the bear. Well, no, he's a bird, so he started hopping angrily over to the bear. And so along his path, as he was hopping, he watched all of the animals do what made them amazing. He watched as the pollinators went from plant to plant, not only feeding themselves, but also helping those plants grow and thrive. And he thought, wow, that's such an amazing gift. He watched as the ants worked together to clear away huge piles of debris. And he thought, wow, you guys are so strong and amazing. That's such a special gift. He watched as the woodpeckers pecked into trees and pulled out those bugs that would eat the trees from the inside out. And not only were they being fed, but they were protecting those trees. And he thought, wow, that's pretty amazing. He watched as the wasps ate and created at the same time, and he thought, that's pretty incredible too. He watched the beaver cut down the trees and created these pockets where all of these little animals were able to drink, where new medicines were able to grow. And he thought, that's incredible. Beaver, you're amazing. And then he started to feel bad. He said, everybody, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I made anybody feel like they were less than amazing. Because you all have incredible talents and gifts, and you're all special in your own way, and I'm so sorry I didn't see that. And I'm so sorry I made everybody feel bad. But look at me now. I'm not special at all. And so, on his path, he apologized to all of the animals that he had made feel bad. And by the time he got to the bear, he wasn't angry anymore. He was sad. And he said, Bear, I'm so sorry I made anybody feel bad. I now see that I was wrong. Everybody's incredible in their own way, Bear. And now look at me. I'm not special at all. And the bear said, well, yes, Raven, you're very special. Because you learned an incredibly valuable lesson. Not only that nobody can catch the sun, but that everyone is equal. You learned a lesson about humility. The raven kind of looked around and said, what's humility? And the bear explained, humility is the ability not to take yourself too seriously, to not compare yourself to others and think that you're better than anyone else. Humility is about being humble. Yes, you might have some amazing gifts, but So does everyone else, and it's recognizing those gifts in other people. And the raven thought about it for a moment. He said, humility. Not taking myself too seriously. Okay. And then he thought about it again, and he thought about that joke, that trick that the bear played on him. And he thought, Bear, that was a pretty good trick. It was a really good way to teach me about humility. And then as he thought about the trick more and more, he started to laugh, and this was the first time the raven got his voice. Ah, 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 ah! And so this was the first time he actually spoke in his words. And he said, you know what? You're right, Bear. Humility. I think the best way to teach people and to teach animals humility is by playing tricks on them. So Bear, from this point on, I'm going to become the trickster, and I'm going to beat all of those tricks that you played on me with everyone else. And so from that point on, he became the trickster. And so in many of our stories, the raven is the trickster. But to this day, there's always a little shimmer of rainbow left in the raven's feather to remind him to stay humble. So that is the raven story. I'm going to have a sip of water, and then I'm going to share the raven song. So the raven song shares the story that I just shared. And so we sing it, of course, in 4 rounds, down to the 4 directions. But after the 3rd round, you'll hear the raven fall out of the sky. And then we're going to get higher because he's learned his lesson. And in it, he's broken down into 3 parts of the song. There's a part that we sing all together to honor each other's voices. There's a part where we let out a happy sound. And it's basically so that we don't take ourselves too seriously. So we, whether it be a woo or a yippee or a ow or a woo, that's my sound, or a yay, whatever your sound is. You're going to share with in the 2nd part, so you'll hear that. And then the 3rd is just a call and response. So the raven calling out and that person calling back in their own language. And so this is the raven song. So the next story I'm going to share is the creation story. Oh, hey.
Give me a second. I forgot this.
Yeah, you hurt your thing. Okay.
Yeah.
What? Unless you want to sing a quick song with me.
I know
Awesome. So this is a creation story. And so before we were here for this time, we were actually here before, and at that time was Sacajak, who is a kind of a Cree trickster spirit. He kind of is a basis for humanity, so this is why we're not perfect either, because Sacajak wasn't perfect. But he was supposed to teach us how to live on the land. He was supposed to teach us how to speak to and how to honor the animals. He was supposed to teach us how to honor the land itself, honor the plants, honor the standing people, which are the trees, honor the flying people, and honor the air, honor the swimmers, and honor the water. And he didn't. He was supposed to teach us how to do it, but he didn't. And unfortunately, because we didn't learn how to take care of things, the whole world fell apart. It's like, this is why we have, parents or caregivers that have to teach us how to live in the world. So if they don't do their job, we don't know how to live in the world, and everything kind of falls apart. And so the same thing happened with humanity the first time around. The two-leggeds, that's what we're called, because we walk around on two legs. And so, the land started getting sick because we kept taking and taking and taking, not using everything, and the whole world was just getting depleted and falling apart because it didn't have a chance to recover. We weren't taking care of the waters. We were throwing things in it and making the waters really, really sick, and in turn, all of the fish started to die. We weren't taking care of the air, so because all of the land was depleted, we were lighting fires to stay warm, but the fires were spreading kind of out of control, and it was making the air really, really sick. The animals, of course, they were getting depleted as well because they didn't have a chance to grow back. They weren't being harvested in a good way. All of the animal wasn't being used, and so they ended up, whoever was left just went into hiding because they were just afraid that the two-leggeds were just going to destroy everything. And because everything was so scarce, there wasn't a lot of food growing because, of course, we weren't taking care and maintaining it in a good way. There wasn't enough water to drink. The air was very, very thin, and everybody was getting really sick and coughing a lot. Of course, that led to us fighting over those few little resources that were left. And so we started going to war with each other and killing each other, and it was just a bad time. And creators saw all of this stuff happening and said, okay, no, we need a do-over. Okay, with Sacajak, you didn't do your good job. And because of this, everything's falling apart. So creators started to make it rain. And it was Sacajak who was sleeping under a tree, just ignoring everything that was happening, because he was like, it's not my fault, it's not my problem. But it totally was. He was sleeping under a tree very close to a riverbank, and he felt a little bit of rain, but he was under the tree, he was getting lots of shade, it was fine. And then all of a sudden, he felt the water creeping over his toes. He didn't really think much of it, so he just kind of continued to sleep and pulled up his legs a little bit. But then he felt that water continued to rise, and it came up to his knees, and he thought, oh my goodness, what is happening? And he opened his eyes, and he saw that the riverbanks were starting to get higher and higher and higher, and that it was starting to rain harder and harder and harder. And he knew that this meant Creator was going to wash the world clean. And he needed to do something about it. So he thought, okay, how can I rebuild the earth once it's coated in water, and how can we save whatever animals are left? Oh, I'll go ask the beaver, because the beaver always has the best solutions. And so Wasakajak went to the beaver and he said, Beaver, beaver, you're the smartest animal I know, so there's going to be a huge flood coming, and we're going to have to be able to save all of the animals so that we can rebuild the earth. And the beaver said, well, she thought about it for a moment, and she thought, and she thought, and she said, well, I suppose we could go and talk to the cedar tree. So the cedar tree was the oldest living cedar tree on earth. She had been there for thousands upon thousands of years. She was absolutely huge, and she carried so much wisdom because she had watched, the two-leggeds being born and all of the animals being born and all of creation. A lot of different cultures have that kind of a tree. It's kind of like the tree of life. But in this particular story, it's a cedar tree. And so the beaver went to the cedar tree and said, Cedar, cedar, there's a huge flood coming. How are we going to be able to protect the animals, and how are we going to be able to rebuild the earth? And the cedar said, well, I was waiting for you, beaver, because I knew this day would come, because it's come before. But I need you to cut me down and hollow me out, so that all of the animals can be saved, all of the animals that are left. And the the beaver was like, no, 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 I don't, no, like, you're the most sacred of all trees. Like, I can't cut you down. That would be awful. And the cedar tree said, don't worry, I will be back in time. But this is the only way that we're going to be able to rebuild the earth and be able to save everyone. So please, beaver, cut me down, hollow me out, and we're going to save everyone. And so the beaver very reluctantly cut the cedar tree down. And as the cedar tree started to tip, there was a loud crack. And as she hit the ground, because she was so, so large, it just shook the whole earth. The whole earth just went boom. And all of the animals knew that was them being called. And so from all corners of the earth, all of the animals came to the beautiful cedar tree. And by the time everyone arrived, the beaver had finished carving out the beautiful tree, and they began to climb into this wonderful boat out of the beautiful cedar tree. And all of the animals, as they climbed in, they were really worried about what was going to happen next. So once every single animal was in the boat, and it was pretty tight. I mean, it was a pretty large boat because, of course, it was a pretty large tree. It started to rain harder and harder and harder. And as they watched, the riverbank started to come up higher and higher and higher. The ocean started to burst its banks as well, and they linked together until they all coated the earth. And as they looked around, it continued to rain, and it rained harder and harder and harder. And as the animals watched over the side of the cedar boat, the land sunk deeper and deeper and deeper below the water until there was nothing but darkness. But it didn't stop there. It just continued to rain more and more and more. It rained for what seemed like forever, days and nights and days and nights. Or from what they could tell, it was days and nights. It was just all gray all the time. Until one day, it finally stopped. And Wasakajack woke up and he said, it stopped! The rain stopped! We can rebuild the earth! How are we going to do that? I'll go ask the beaver. She's the smartest. And so, of course, he went to the beaver and he said, Beaver, beaver, it stopped raining. That means we can rebuild the earth. What are we going to do now? And the beaver said, well, I suppose to rebuild the earth, we would need a piece of the earth. And yeah, Wasakajack said, that's a great idea, beaver. How are we going to get that? And the beaver said, well, I suppose somebody would have to dive down to the bottom of the ocean, take the earth, and then bring it up so that we could rebuild. And Wasakajack said, that's a great idea. Who's going to get it? The beaver said, well, I'm a pretty reasonable swimmer. Let me try. And so the beaver jumped out of the side of the boat, and she dove down deeper and deeper and deeper, but she couldn't reach the bottom. She came up and she said, Wasakajack, it is so far down. I can't hold my breath that long. And so Wasakajack said, well, there are other animals in the boat. Maybe they could try. And so Wasakajack went to the largest animals, and he said, you animals are the largest. Maybe you can reach the bottom because, well, being your size, maybe you're the closest. And so the moose is a pretty reasonable swimmer. She jumped in and she couldn't reach the bottom. It was just too far down. She's like, there's no way I could hold my breath that long. The bear, who, sometimes he's like, well, maybe I could do it. He jumped out. It was shortly after hibernation, though, so he was packing on a little bit of weight, so he just kind of bobbed in the water and floated around, and everybody's like, oh, bear, get back in the boat. It's unbearable. Sorry. And so he climbed back in the boat. And then Wasakajack said, okay, well, the largest animals couldn't do it. Maybe the best divers could do it. So he asked all of the best divers to try. And so they tried and failed and tried and failed. And the eagle, who could fly the highest, said, well, perhaps because I can fly the highest, I can dive the deepest. And so she flew higher than she'd ever flown before, and then dove straight down into the water. But unfortunately couldn't reach the bottom. I could barely go as deep as the moose. And as she climbed back into the boat, she said, what about the kingfisher? The kingfisher is a phenomenal diver, and she actually uses her wings to swim. And so the kingfisher flew as high as she ever had before, and then dove straight down into the water, cutting it like a knife. And as she used her wings to dive down deeper and deeper and deeper, she still couldn't reach the bottom. She swam up to the top and she said, Wasakajack, it is so far down. I don't think anybody can reach the bottom. And then all of Wasakajack said, well, what about the fastest swimmers? The fastest swimmers, they might be able to hold their breath long enough to get to the bottom. So let's ask. And so he asked all of the fastest swimmers to give it a try. And so the seal tried, couldn't get there. And then the otter said, well, I'm the fastest swimmer. I'm sure I can swim to the bottom. I like to swim really fast. And so she jumped out of the side of the boat. She dove down deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, but she couldn't reach the bottom. As she paddled up to the surface, she said, well, Sakanek is really far down. I don't think anybody can reach the bottom. It's so far down. And so she climbed back up in the boat. The best swimmers said, well, perhaps we can try. And so they dove down and couldn't reach the bottom. It was just too far down. The turtle, who could hold her breath for a really, really long time, said, well, perhaps I can reach the bottom. And so at the last effort, she jumped out and she swam deeper and deeper and deeper. But the deeper she got, the more pressure there was on her shell, until she heard a loud crack. And all of the air left her body, and she came up to the top and onto the surface. And as she climbed back in the boat, they noticed that her shell was cracked. It had 13 cracks through the center to create 13 islands, and then 28 ridges along the outside. Maybe that means something later. And she climbed back in the boat and said, with Sakajack, I don't think anyone can reach the bottom. All of the animals were feeling overwhelmed and without hope. And then they were wondering if they would ever rebuild the earth again, until they heard a tiny voice inside the boat that said, I can do it. And all of the animals looked around and said, well, who said that? And then they heard it again, I can do it. And they looked around again and said, who said that? And the tiny little muskrat stepped forward, puffed out her chest, and stood up proudly and said, I can do it. And all of the animals just started erupting in laughter. They're like, Muskrat, you're so tiny. All of the large animals said, Muskrat, you're so puny and tiny. We couldn't reach the bottom. How are you supposed to reach the bottom? All of the best divers started making fun of her, saying, oh, Muskrat, you're not a very good diver. How are you supposed to reach the bottom? You can barely dive slightly under the surface. And so they started making fun of her. All of the fastest animals started laughing at her. Muskrat, you're so slow. There's no way you can reach the bottom. We can reach the bottom. How are you supposed to reach the bottom? And then, of course, all of the best swimmers started laughing at her, saying, Muskrat, if we couldn't reach the bottom, how are you supposed to reach the bottom? And then finally, Muskrat very proudly said, I can do it. And in spite of all of the laughter, she made her way through the crowd, stepped on the side of the boat, took the deepest breath she ever had before, and dove down straight into the water. She dove down deeper and deeper and deeper. All of the animals were so busy laughing they didn't even see her leave the boat. And then they realized, wait a second, Muskrat's gone. Muskrat jumped in the water, and they watched over the side of the boat to watch her disappear into the darkness of the water below. And they waited, and they waited, and they waited for her to come back, but she didn't come back up. And then they started to worry. They knew that there was no way that Muskrat could have held her breath that long. And they waited, and they waited, and then they saw a tiny bubble of air come to the surface. And they knew that was Muskrat's very last breath. And they started to just be overwhelmed with sadness. They started to cry. They started to feel bad for making fun of Muskrat, because she sacrificed herself to try and reach the bottom. And they began to cry. They cried and they cried and they cried so hard that all of the ocean became salty with their tears. And then Wisakajack, who continued to watch over the boat, saw a tiny silhouette floating up out of the darkness. And as that silhouette got closer, as that little shadow got closer, they realized it was the lifeless body of Muskrat. As I got closer to the boat, Wisakajack reached in with all of his might and held that beautiful muskrat close to his chest. He began to cry. He cried so hard he wiped all of the color off Muskrat's belly. And as everyone was feeling overwhelmed and so sad that they lost such a beautiful friend, Muskrat's tiny paw flopped open. And in the center of her palm, there was a little ball of earth. Muskrat had done it. She had got the earth from the bottom so they could rebuild the earth. She had sacrificed herself so that everyone else could live. All of the animals were so overwhelmed with joy, but so overcome with grief. It was a very strange feeling. And Wisakajack knew he had to get to work. And so he asked all of the animals, who will carry this earth on their back? And the turtle said, I will carry this earth on my back. And she climbed into the water. Wasakajak took that beautiful ball of earth from Muskrat's palm, and he started to rub it on Turtle's shell. As he did, it got larger and larger, became to fan out wider and wider. It also got deeper and deeper and deeper until it pushed the turtle beneath the waves. Wasakajak continued until he created all of the landmass we see to this day. This is why we call it Turtle Island. Wasakajak knew now was the time for him to get to work, so he asked all of the animals to go to all corners of the earth to rebuild. Wasakajak took a deep breath to the east, and as he blew to the east, Grandfather's sun came out from behind the clouds. He began to shine with all of his love and all of his might, began to bring all of that life back out of the earth. All of the seeds began to grow again and just burst forward in a beautiful way. All of the animals became pregnant and their bellies became huge, and a brand new generation of animals was born. And then Wasakajak took a breath. He breathed to the south, and as he did, the earth began to rumble. It began to shake. Huge mountains started rumbling out of the earth. Huge valleys started to form underneath. Rolling hills started making their way across. Huge deserts formed in different parts of Turtle Island. There was a huge rumble, and trees, those ancient trees, began to shoot out towards the sky, reaching high, high to Creator, and reaching their roots deep into Turtle Island to hold them steady. Wasakajak took another deep breath to the west, and as he did, Grandmother Moon came out from behind those clouds, and she shone with all of her might, and she pushed with all of her love, and all of the waters rushed over Turtle Island. As she pulled back, the waters receded. She continued to push and pull out, in and out, and all of the waves began to form in the oceans. The tides started to come in and out, and all of the waters were formed all over Turtle Island. The lakes and the rivers and the streams and the ponds and the seas and all of the water that we see here, Grandmother Moon has washed into place. And then Wasakajak took another deep breath to the north, and as he blew to the north, the winds began to spin. They began to spin faster and faster and faster, and the whole world began to spin faster and faster and faster. So Grandmother Moon and Grandfather Sun worked together. They pushed and they pulled and they pushed and they pulled until eventually they got into a rhythm, and they created the days and the nights and the weeks and the seasons. And now those are what we know to this day. The winds still continued to spin, but very controlled, and all of the animals, for their very first time, took their first sacred breath. And this is how they understood the knowledge of the universe, and they knew that they were to teach the two-leggeds when we came back. And Wasakajak held that beautiful muskrat in his arms. He took another deep breath and blew the sacred breath right into Muskrat. And Muskrat, she took that sacred breath and she came back to life. She was so thankful and humbled to have her life back, but she was so thankful for the world that she had helped create. And to this day, the muskrats are considered very sacred, a sign of hope and a sign of sacrifice. And so that is the creator song, or creation story. And so I will share the creator song to go with that story. And this song I learned from my friend Night's Sun. And what's really interesting about this song is, yeah, the moment I heard it, I was like, I don't know why I know this song, but I feel like I know this song. And it was really easy for me to learn. And then I went to share it with my great aunt. And as I was drumming and singing this song that I had just learned from my great aunt, she started singing with me. And I was like, Auntie, you know this song? She's like, yeah, this is one of our family songs. And so it's amazing how things kind of come full circle. Yeah, so this is the creator song. Espeme kotawino, ize koko tawino, weo heyo ha weo, weo song or the Thunderbird song usually. I really like to chew on ice. It's awesome. So this is a traveling song. It teaches us that all paths lead home. And no matter how far we get away from home, there's still a piece of it that stays within us. And home is what you make of it. So we have friends that are considered our family. I have a lot of sisters from another mother, which I really appreciated the time that I spend with them. And even though we've been apart for so long, whenever we get back together, it's almost like we're picking up right from where we left off. And I think that's truly the sign of a good friend. It's not about having to be in contact constantly, but it's knowing that they're going to be there and you're going to be there for them whenever you need them. And so this song is a gift to be able to remind us of that, to remind us of the paths that we walk down, create the person that we are. But that family and home is inside of us. It's not a place, but it's that sense of connection that we have. And, you know, we need to go down those roads. We need to learn those lessons so that we're a better person, and we can serve our community in a better way. So this is... this song was actually shared with me originally by Sharon Pooh Turner, who was an amazing elder, and I miss her every single day. I always think of her every single day. It's almost like I can hear her voice. And it was a blessing to be able to spend that time with her before she passed. And this song I thought was lost, but then it came full circle again. My friend Yolanda and actually they brought it with them back from the East, and yeah, it was amazing how I was thinking of Sharon a lot, and then this song came through, and I'm like, oh, that's so crazy. But yeah, this is the traveling song, and I hope that you have a beautiful week ahead. I hope that your last week was great. Yeah, so this is the traveling song. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Everybody out there in Facebook land, everybody out there on YouTube, please do feel free to share. I always keep them archived so anybody can watch them at any time, and I always say you never know when you're going to need those teachings. This is why sometimes I share the same teachings but a little bit different. Sometimes I share different stories, and it's really about just hearing what you need. You can hear the same story 1,000 times in your life, and every time you hear it, it's going to have a different significance, a different meaning, because you're in a different part of your life. And so that's what the beauty of these stories are. All of our stories connect us. So Chimagwich, everybody, hi for joining me, and have a beautiful, beautiful week.